I'm a simple man. I like things that work, and singletune.com works. If you're looking for a real partner, that's the place.
She handed me divorce papers in front of 200 people, smiled like she'd just closed the deal of her life, and had absolutely no idea I owned the building she was standing in, the software her firm ran on, and every credit line keeping her operation alive. I gave her 60 minutes before I pulled every plug. My name is Kendrick Holloway. I'm 47 years old, and until about 3 weeks ago, I genuinely believed I understood my wife. Not in some naive, head-in-the-clouds way. I'm not that guy. I've spent my career reading contracts, reading markets, reading people. I thought our marriage, even with its rough edges and the distance that had quietly grown between us over the years, was built on something that mattered. Mutual respect, at minimum. A shared history. 11 years of building a life together. Turns out I was just the scaffolding she needed, while she constructed something she actually wanted. I built my money in commercial real estate. Not the social media kind where people post about flipping houses and living their best life. The boring kind. Strip plazas and growing secondary markets. Mid-sized office buildings in cities that weren't flashy enough for the big coastal money to notice yet. Warehouse space near distribution corridors that were expanding before anyone admitted they were expanding. I found undervalued assets, stabilized them, held them, and let good tenants do the rest. It wasn't exciting to talk about at dinner parties, but it was consistent, and it was mine. That same quiet approach was what let me fund my wife Gwendolyn's ambitions, without ever making her feel like she owed me anything. Gwendolyn Ashford Holloway, 39, sharp in the way that certain people are sharp, the kind where you only notice how precise they are after they've already cut you. She came into my life 11 years ago with her teenage daughter Petra from a previous relationship, a smile that lit up every room she walked into, and a vision for building her own management consulting firm from the ground up. I fell hard and I fell fast, and for a long time, I don't regret it. We had our son Callum together. He's 12 now. Plays soccer on 2 different leagues, collects vintage sneakers instead of baseball cards, and still knocks on my office door at night to say goodnight even though I know his friends would give him grief about it if they knew. Petra is 15. Quieter than her brother, but she watches everything. She's always observed her mother the way someone watches a magician, fascinated but not entirely trusting the trick. For the last 3 years, I was Gwendolyn's silent engine. Not on paper, not with any formal agreement, because she never asked for one and I never pushed for one. That was my mistake, and I own it. I funded the startup costs for Ashford Advisory Partners, $14.5 million across 3 years. Seed capital, lease costs, marketing build-out, hiring, technology infrastructure, professional services. I covered every household expense so she could pour her salary back into building the brand. I introduced her to executives I'd done property deals with, men and women who wouldn't have taken a meeting with a new boutique firm unless someone they trusted made the call first. I even helped her hire the team that became her core, Fiona Marsh, Brendan Osei, and Celeste Aguirre. 3 sharp consultants who'd spent years grinding at bigger firms and wanted to bet on something they could actually shape. They believed in Gwendolyn's vision of a boutique firm that could punch above its weight, and she gave them a compelling pitch for why it would work. The launch party was supposed to be a celebration for both of us. That's what she said. Our big night, she called it, kissing me on the cheek while adjusting the neckline of her emerald dress in our bedroom mirror. I wore the charcoal suit she'd picked out for me last month. I felt proud standing next to her getting ready, embarrassing in retrospect, but true. The venue was a converted loft space in downtown Portland. Exposed brick walls, warm industrial lighting, a catering spread that probably cost more per guest than most people spend on a week of groceries. 200 guests. Current clients, prospective clients, journalists from the local business press, competitors who wanted to get a read on the new player in the market. Gwendolyn worked that room the way some people run marathons, like they were born for the specific physical punishment of it, every movement deliberate and controlled, that brilliant smile never slipping for a second. I stood near the bar with a glass of bourbon, watching her move through the crowd, proud of what she'd built. Dylan was home with a sitter, Callum, sorry, and Petra had asked to stay home, said she had a paper due. I didn't push it. I should have paid more attention to that quiet decision of hers. Then came the speech. Gwendolyn stepped onto the small platform they'd set up near the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city, and the room settled into that particular hush that happens when everyone already knows they're watching someone perform. She thanked her team, she thanked her mentors, she thanked the clients who'd taken a risk on a new firm when they didn't have to. She talked about vision and persistence and the courage it takes to build something from nothing. Then, she looked directly at me. "And I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special," she said, and her voice had that boardroom smoothness I'd heard her practice in the shower. "My husband, Kendrick." People turned. I raised my glass slightly, preparing for the standard grateful spouse acknowledgement. Maybe she'd say I was her rock, her support system, the usual script. "Kendrick has been what I've come to think of as my test-run husband," she continued, and the room did something strange. It didn't go loud, it went completely still, the kind of still that happens when 200 people simultaneously realize they're witnessing something they weren't supposed to see. Steady enough to help me build the foundation I needed, patient enough to stay out of the way while I figured out what I actually wanted. And now that the foundation is complete, it's time for me to build the life I actually want. She pulled a cream-colored envelope from behind the podium. My brain hadn't caught up yet. I was still parsing the words test-run husband, still registering the way the faces around me had cycled through confusion and awkward fascination, when Gwendolyn stepped off the platform and walked across the room toward me, heels clicking a steady rhythm on the hardwood floor. Up close, I could see her eyes were clear and hard and very certain. Not sad, not apologetic, certain. She held out the envelope. "These are divorce papers," she said quietly enough that it was almost private, except for the 5 or 6 people standing close enough to hear every syllable. "Consider it Ashford Advisory's first case study in dissolving partnerships that have outlived their purpose." A few people laughed nervously. Someone near the back of the room actually clapped, the kind of slow, confused clap that happens when someone mistakes cruelty for performance art. I opened the envelope. Legal letterhead, petition for dissolution of marriage, filed 4 days ago. Her signature already on it. "You could have done this privately," I said. My voice came out steady. I'm still mildly impressed by that. "Where's the impact in that?" she replied. "You always said every deal, every partnership, every ending should mean something. You taught me that." I folded the papers and put them in my jacket pocket. The room was still watching. Phones were probably out. This was going to be on local social media before I made it to my car. I looked at Gwendolyn. Really looked at her the way you look at someone when you're trying to find the person you thought you knew. And I understood, with complete and quiet clarity, that I was looking at a stranger who'd been running a very long con. "Congratulations on your launch," I said. Then I walked out, past the expensive cheese platters and the uncomfortable witnesses and the exposed brick walls I'd basically paid for. The valet brought my car around, and I tipped him $50 because my hands needed something to do. I sat in the driver's seat of my car for maybe 90 seconds. Then I drove to a diner on the edge of town, ordered coffee I didn't drink, opened my laptop, and got to work. See, here's the thing Gwendolyn didn't know. Here's the thing she'd never bothered to ask about in 11 years, because she'd decided early on that I was the boring, steady one who managed rental properties while she built empires. She had no idea that I didn't just own properties. I owned infrastructure. Ashford Advisory Partners leased their downtown office space from a holding company called Ridgeline Commercial Properties, LLC. I'd acquired that building 3 years ago through a subsidiary when Gwendolyn was first looking for a location. She'd loved it, and Ridgeline had offered her a below-market lease rate because the property management team, which reported to me, wanted to support local businesses. That was the story she told people. It was technically accurate and completely incomplete. The client management platform her firm used, the one they ran everything through, client data, project timelines, billing, internal communications, was licensed through a software company I had equity in. I'd introduced Gwendolyn to the CEO at a networking event 2 years ago. She'd negotiated what she thought was a great startup discount. What she didn't know was that her licensing agreement contained a clause allowing the equity holder to revoke access under specific breach conditions. The main credit line the firm used for operational expenses had been arranged through a banking relationship I'd built over 15 years. The loan officer knew me. The approval terms were favorable because of that relationship. The guarantee structure, buried in the fine print that Gwendolyn had initialed without reading, tied the line to conditions that included, and this was the part that I'd spent 3 years quietly positioning, written notification to all investment partners before filing any legal action to dissolve the associated partnership. She'd filed divorce papers 4 days ago without telling me. She'd just violated the guarantee structure on her own credit line. I made my first call at 1 in the morning. My banker, a man named Walter Kinsey, who I'd done business with for 15 years, and who had probably already seen the social media footage of the launch party. He picked up on the second ring. "Kendrick," he said, "I saw what happened. Are you all right?" "I need to execute the termination clause on account Series 7, I said, "effective immediately. Then everything else. Every standing authorization, every automatic payment, every credit facility tied to Ashford Advisory." A pause. "Kendrick, that's going to cause significant operational disruption. I know exactly what it's going to cause. Can you do it or not?" Another pause. Longer. He was calculating risk, liability, loyalty, and the 17 different ways this conversation could go wrong for him. "Give me 2 hours, he said finally. "I'll need to coordinate with compliance." 1 hour, and Walter. No warning calls to Gwendolyn. This is business. Understood. I sat in that diner booth until sunrise. When I got home, the house was quiet. Callum was still asleep. Petra's door was closed. I went straight to my office on the second floor, the one room Gwendolyn had never cared about, because it didn't match her vision for how the house should look. Dark wood, leather chair, walls lined with binders of property documentation that looked like tedious administrative paperwork to anyone who didn't understand what it represented. I locked the door, old habit from my early days in real estate, when I learned that privacy wasn't paranoia, it was protection. I put my phone on airplane mode at 6 in the morning, not out of anxiety, out of control. I wanted every system to execute, every payment to fail, every authorization to decline before Gwendolyn even finished her morning coffee. At 11:30, I took it off airplane mode. The phone didn't vibrate. It convulsed. The screen lit up with cascading notifications, the numbers updating so fast I had to focus to read them. 42 missed calls. Then it refreshed, 89. Another refresh. The missed call counter rolled past 100 and kept climbing. Text messages arrived in waves. Gwendolyn first. "What did you do to the accounts? Call me." Then Fiona Marsh. "Kendrick, something's wrong with our banking access." Gwendolyn is in a panic. "Please call." Then Gwendolyn again, tone shifting. "This is sabotage. I swear to God, if you're doing this out of spite, I will." I didn't respond. I poured fresh coffee and watched the missed call counter climb past 200. Then a number I recognized. Rutherford Ashford, Gwendolyn's father, former senior partner at a corporate litigation firm, with a reputation for making problems go away through a combination of legal precision and the quiet, grinding pressure of institutional resources. He'd built half his career intimidating people across deposition tables. His text read, "We need to talk. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." I set the phone down and went back to my coffee. At 336 missed calls, my doorbell rang. Not frantic, not desperate. A measured, composed ring that said someone was here on business, not an emotion. I looked through the peephole. Rutherford Ashford, 76 years old, still precisely dressed in a gray wool overcoat, silver hair impeccable, hands clasped in front of him with the patience of someone who fully expected the door to open. I let him wait an extra 30 seconds, then opened the door. I didn't invite him in. "Kendrick," he said in that smooth courtroom voice, "I know this looks bad, but we're both reasonable men. We can resolve this without it getting uglier." "Can we?" I said. Not a question. Gwendolyn made a mistake, a public one. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. What matters now is damage control. He paused just long enough to let that land. "I've been in contact with 3 different firms. We can structure a buyout of your investment. Full return, 20% premium for your inconvenience. You walk away whole, Ashford Advisory stabilizes, and everyone moves forward." "I didn't make an investment," I said. "I built her entire operation. The office lease, the credit facilities, the vendor agreements, the licensing contracts. All of it runs through systems I control." For just a fraction of a second, Something moved behind Rutherford Ashford's eyes, long enough to confirm that Gwendolyn had never told her father exactly how the firm was funded. He recovered quickly. Then, name your price. I don't want money, I said. I want her to understand what happens when you treat people like tools. His jaw tightened. You're making a serious mistake. She has resources, legal resources. You're opening yourself up to litigation and scrutiny that you may not want. Let her file, I said. Discovery should be interesting, especially the part about where her startup capital came from. I closed the door. Not a slam, just a firm, final click. I heard him stand on my porch for another 30 seconds before his footsteps moved back down the walkway. I went upstairs and got back to work. By Monday morning, the operational damage was complete, and I didn't have to track it myself. The cascade of messages from people who'd been at that launch party looking smug was doing it for me. Brendan Osei sent a careful email at 7 in the morning. Kendrick, I hope we can address the current situation professionally. Several vendor contracts have been suspended, and we're trying to understand the scope. We need your help. I deleted it. Celeste Aguiar tried a softer approach at 8:30. I know things are complicated right now, but our clients are starting to ask questions. Is there any path to resolution that protects everyone's interests? Deleted. By 9 in the morning, the Portland business forums were lighting up. Someone posted in a local consulting industry group. Anyone know what's happening at Ashford Advisory? Their office was locked this morning and the website's down. The comments came fast. Speculation. Rumors. One caught my eye. Heard the founder's husband pulled all the funding after she served him divorce papers at her own launch party. Another reply underneath it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I closed the browser and opened my email. There was one I hadn't expected, from a woman named Vanessa Cole, Gwendolyn's administrative assistant. Young, competent, the kind of organized that makes other people look scattered. Subject line, confidential. For your eyes only. Mr. Holloway, I don't know if you'll see this, but I think you should know that Mrs. Holloway asked me last week to set aside and conceal certain financial documents. She said it was standard business practice. It didn't feel standard. I've attached scanned copies. I don't want to be part of whatever's happening here. I'm sorry. I opened the attachments. Bank statements showing transfers I had never authorized. Loan applications bearing signatures that were close approximations of mine. Close enough to fool a teller at a busy branch, not close enough to fool a handwriting analyst. A draft operating agreement for Ashford Advisory listing Gwendolyn as sole owner with no reference whatsoever to my $14.5 million in capital contributions. She hadn't made an impulsive decision at a party. This had been an exit strategy, planned and executed over months. I forwarded everything to my attorney, Richard Taft, with 4 words: add fraud to filing. Gwendolyn called twice more that afternoon, and I let both go to voicemail. The third time, I answered. What do you want? I said. Not hostile. Flat. Kendrick, please. Her voice had lost the boardroom polish. She sounded tired, and beneath the tiredness, scared. Whatever's happening with the accounts, we can fix it. I want to talk in person. There's nothing to fix, I said. The accounts are frozen because the agreements you signed have termination clauses. You violated those clauses when you filed for divorce without proper notification to your investment partners. You're my husband, not an investment partner. Was, I said. You made that very clear on Saturday. Now I'm a creditor collecting what's owed. The firm will collapse. Fiona, Brendan, Celeste, they'll lose everything. Our clients? Your firm, I said. Your problem. You wanted to build something without me. Consider this your opportunity. I hung up and blocked her number. Then Rutherford's. Then every number associated with Ashford Advisory. My phone went quiet for the first time in days. I opened a new document and started planning. Wednesday brought the news I'd been waiting for. The State Business Registry had suspended Ashford Advisory's license pending resolution of outstanding vendor claims. That suspension was public record. Clients could see it, competitors could see it, journalists could see it. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Callum came downstairs in his soccer pajamas, hair going in 4 different directions. Dad, where's Mom? She's staying somewhere else for a while, I said. Because of the divorce. I looked at him carefully. You know about that? Petra told me. She said Mom did something mean at the party and you guys aren't together anymore. He poured his cereal. Are you sad? I thought about that honestly. No, I said. I'm tired, but not sad. Good, he said. Mom was always on her phone anyway. Kids see more than we give them credit for. That afternoon, my attorney called. The forensic accountant finished the preliminary review, Richard said. Those signatures on the loan applications, they're not good forgeries, Kendrick. Any handwriting expert will confirm it inside an hour. How much did she pull? $2.3 million, across 4 separate financial institutions. She used your business credit profile to secure favorable rates, then routed the funds into Ashford Advisory operating accounts. I sat with that for a moment. Not with anger, with recognition. She'd been stealing from me while sharing a bed with me. File criminal charges, I said, all applicable counts. Fraud, identity theft, whatever the DA wants to work with. This is going to be public, very public. She made our divorce public entertainment, I said. She can manage the consequences being public too. Understood. I'll have paperwork filed by end of business today. By evening, all 3 of Gwendolyn's partners had reached out. Not to her, to me. Fiona Marsh, Mr. Holloway. I'm exploring options outside of Ashford Advisory and would welcome the chance to discuss any new ventures you may be considering. Brendan Osei, more direct. The ship's sinking and I'm not going down with it. Coffee this week? Celeste Aguiar's message was the simplest. I should have asked more questions. I'm sorry. Can we talk? They'd done the math. The firm was done. Gwendolyn was toxic and about to be indicted. And I was the one with the capital and the network to build something real. I replied to all 3 with the same message. Friday, 10 a.m., my office. Bring your client lists. Friday morning, the 3 of them sat in my home office, looking like they'd survived something and weren't entirely sure how. Fiona spoke first, 32, precise, serious. Mr. Holloway, I want to be direct about why we're here. We believed in what Ashford Advisory could become. We didn't know how the firm was funded or what was happening in the background. I know, I said. You're good at your jobs. That's why you're here. Brendan leaned forward. What are you actually offering? A real firm. Transparent financing, proper equity structures, no hidden arrangements. You bring your expertise and your relationships. I provide the capital and the framework. We build something that doesn't fall apart when one person decides to play power games. Celeste studied me. What's the catch? No catch. I hold controlling interest, 60%. You 3 split 30% equally. The remaining 10 goes into a performance pool tied to growth. You want more equity? You earn it by building value. They looked at each other. This was a real offer. Better than the alternative of starting over at established firms, where they'd spend years climbing back to where they already were. What about Gwendolyn? Fiona asked quietly. She's going to call this sabotage. She'll say you're using your resources to punish her. Let her, I said. I have forensic accountants, paper trails, and fraud charges being filed today. She can tell whatever story she wants. The evidence tells a different one. Brendan nodded slowly. When do we start? Monday. I've secured office space downtown. Better location, different building. We'll call it Holloway Strategic Group. They shook on it. Professional, clean, no drama. After they left, I looked at the incorporation documents my attorney had prepared and felt something I recognized from the early days of my real estate career. The specific clarity that comes from building something on solid ground. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is emotional and temporary, and it eats the person carrying it. This was replacement. Gwendolyn had thought she was building something real. I was going to build what she'd only been pretending to build, and this time, it would actually be real. My phone buzzed. A message from Petra. Dad. Mom tried to pick me up from school today. I told her I'm staying with you. She got upset. Wanted you to know. I texted back. Thank you for telling me. You're safe here. 3 dots. Then, I know. Love you, Dad. 15 years old, and she'd already drawn her own conclusions about who her mother was and who she wanted to be near. I hadn't asked her to choose. She'd watched and decided. The foundation was gone. The firm was dead. But something better was already being built, and this time I was building it with open eyes. 2 weeks after filing criminal charges, the Portland Business Journal ran it as their lead story. Former consulting firm founder faces fraud charges. Gwendolyn Ashford Holloway, accused of identity theft, bank fraud. The article laid out the timeline in clinical detail. $2.3 million across 4 institutions. Forged signatures. A pattern of deliberate misrepresentation spanning 8 months. Bank documents, handwriting examination, forensic accounting, all public record. We'd been open at Holloway Strategic for 1 week by then. 3 former Ashford advisory clients had already transitioned over, plus 2 new ones we'd brought in on our own. Fiona showed me the article on her tablet. "She's going to say, 'You orchestrated this,'" Fiona said quietly. "Her attorney already did," I said. "Statement to the press yesterday. Vindictive husband using his resources to destroy her career." Brendan walked over from his desk. "It's not landing. The comments are brutal. People remember the launch party footage." He was right. The video of Gwendolyn handing me divorce papers while calling me her test-run husband had circulated widely enough that when the fraud charges surfaced, people immediately connected the two. One comment I'd seen summarized the public mood perfectly. She publicly humiliated the man who funded her business, then got caught stealing millions in his name. That's not vindictive prosecution. That's consequences. 3 weeks after opening, Holloway Strategic held its own launch event. Not a party, a professional networking reception at a downtown hotel. 50 invited guests, current clients, prospective clients, industry contacts I'd worked with over the years. No champagne toasts, no speeches about disruption. Just solid business conversations and straightforward value propositions. Fiona handled the presentations because she was better at them than I was, and because it sent the right message. This wasn't a vanity project. It was a real firm with real talent. Callum and Petra came with me. Callum wore a dress shirt and clip-on tie and looked simultaneously 12 years old and very seriously professional about it. Petra wore a simple dark dress and stayed close to me most of the evening, watching the room with those careful eyes of hers. A reporter from the Business Journal approached me during a quieter moment. Mid-40s, professional, digital recorder in hand. "Mr. Holloway, some people are calling Holloway Strategic a revenge project, a way to punish your ex-wife by taking her team and clients. How do you respond to that?" I respond by pointing to our client retention rate, our growth projections, and the fact that we operate with transparent funding and legitimate business practices, I said. If that's revenge, then every well-run business is revenge against bad management. And your wife's criminal charges. Do you feel any responsibility for her current situation? My wife made her own choices, I said. She chose to forge documents and build a business on fraud. Those were her decisions. I'm simply not protecting her from the consequences of them. The reporter nodded and made a note. One last question. If you could go back to the night of the launch party, would you do anything differently? I thought about that. Actually thought about it. No, I said. That night showed me exactly who I'd married. Sometimes you need that kind of clarity, even when it hurts. She thanked me and moved on. I felt a hand slip into mine, Petra standing beside me. "You did good, Dad," she said quietly. "You didn't yell. You didn't make it a scene. You just told the truth." 15 years old, and she already understood that dignity matters more than volume. About a month after the launch event, Holloway Strategic added 2 new full-time staff and brought in a data insights specialist named Ren Kaminsky, who'd approached Brendan about the firm after reading about it in the Business Journal. Ren was in her late 20s, genuinely good at her work, and had a habit of asking questions that made everyone in the room think harder than they wanted to. She fit. One afternoon, she called an informal meeting to talk about the firm's growth trajectory, and in the middle of it, brought up something slightly unexpected. "I want to flag a resource that might be relevant for a few of us on a personal level," Ren said. She had a tablet open and a slightly mischievous look about her. "There's a platform called singletune.com that a friend of mine used after her own messy divorce. It's been getting attention in the advisory and startup communities, actually, because the methodology is interesting. They call it precision tuning. Essentially, they focus on filtering for people who are genuinely who they present themselves to be, rather than people who are skilled at presenting the right version of themselves in early stages. I looked up from the quarterly projection I'd been skimming. Is it like tuning for singles or what? Ren smiled. Their actual slogan is, single tune, verify the vibe, meet the one. But yes, basically. The concept is that most relationship platforms optimize for initial attraction. This one tries to optimize for actual alignment, values, transparency, the stuff you don't know about someone until year 3, when the performance layer starts coming off. There was a moment of silence around the table that felt specific to those of us who had recently experienced precisely what happens when the performance layer comes off. Noted, I said. Fiona raised an eyebrow at me. You're actually considering that, aren't you? I'm considering everything that involves building something on a real foundation, I said. That's kind of my thing now. The meeting moved on, but I thought about it afterward in a way I hadn't expected. Not because I was in any particular hurry, I wasn't, but because there was something honest about the premise. The idea that the point wasn't to find someone impressive, it was to find someone real. I'd spent 11 years with someone impressive who'd turned out to be running a very long performance. I had zero appetite for a repeat. The fraud case moved through the system the way these cases do, slowly, documented, and without the dramatic reversals that happen in movies. The DA had Vanessa Cole's evidence, the forensic accounting, and the handwriting review. Gwendolyn's options narrowed over several weeks until they narrowed to one. Rutherford Ashford called me one evening. His voice was different this time. Not the practiced courtroom smoothness. Something underneath it that I recognized as tiredness. I'm calling as her father, he said, no, not as an attorney, off the record. I'm listening. She made serious mistakes. I'm not disputing that, but a trial will destroy whatever's left of her. Is there any path forward before this goes that far? I already knew the answer before he finished. What are you proposing? She pleads to reduced charges, full restitution with interest, probation. You get your money back and she gets a chance to rebuild at some point. In exchange, you don't testify beyond what's already in the record. I was quiet for a moment, not because I was considering it, but because I wanted Rutherford Ashford to understand exactly why the answer was no. Rutherford, your daughter didn't just steal from me, I said. She committed fraud against 4 separate financial institutions. She forged legal documents. She built a firm on criminal activity. This stopped being about me the moment she involved those banks. The law has discretion, he said. So do I replied. And I'm choosing to let it run its course. Gwendolyn wanted to dissolve our partnership. Fine, but she doesn't get to commit crimes and walk away because her father has connections. A long silence. I thought you were better than this, he said finally. I am better than this, I said. That's why I'm not the one facing charges. I hung up. The plea hearing happened on a gray Thursday morning. I didn't attend. Richard texted me updates. Guilty plea entered. 2 counts bank fraud, 1 count identity theft. Judge accepted. Sentencing in 30 days. I was in my office reviewing client proposals when the message came in. Fiona was presenting to a prospective account in the conference room. Brendan was on a call with a manufacturer. Celeste was reviewing contract language for a healthcare client. Normal business. Good business. The kind that didn't need fraud to function. Another message from Rutherford. Preston made a statement to the press. Says you orchestrated a campaign against his daughter. Expects you to respond. I didn't respond. The court record spoke for itself. The guilty plea spoke for itself. Everything else was noise from people who couldn't sit with the fact that actions have consequences. That evening, Petra came into my home office while I was reviewing quarterly numbers. She sat down across from my desk in the way she did when she had something she'd decided needed to be said directly. Mom called me, she said, from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered before I knew it was her. I kept my expression neutral. What did she say? She wanted me to testify at her sentencing. Say that you manipulated me, turned me against her, That she's a good mother who made one mistake. Petra's hands were clasped in her lap, but her voice was level. She said the judge would go easier on her if I said that. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that you didn't manipulate me, that I've watched her ignore us for years while she built her career, that she made choices and now she has to live with them. A pause. Then I hung up. 15 years old, already understanding something that takes some adults their whole lives to figure out. That loyalty isn't owed automatically. It's built. I'm proud of you, I said. She's going to hate me for it, Petra said quietly. Maybe, I said. But you'll respect yourself in the long run. That matters more. She nodded and seemed to settle slightly. Dylan asked me if we're bad kids for not defending Mom. Callum, I corrected gently. Right, sorry, he asked if we were bad kids. What did you tell him? I told him we're honest kids. There's a difference. She paused. There is, right? There is, I said. She stood to leave, hesitated at the door. Holloway Strategic is doing really well, right? Really well. Good, she said. It proves something. That you didn't need her. You were always the one building things. She just stood on top of them and took credit. After she left, I sat in the quiet of my office for a long time. She was right. For 11 years, I'd been the actual infrastructure while Gwendolyn positioned herself as the architect. I'd funded everything, cleared every obstacle, made every critical introduction. And the moment she decided she was done with me, she'd discarded me as publicly and deliberately as she could manage. But here was the thing about foundations. They don't disappear when someone stops standing on them. They stay solid, ready for whatever gets built on them next. I'd built Holloway Strategic on that same foundation, my capital, my network, my reputation, except this time I wasn't invisible in the background. I was fully present, an equal partner with Fiona, Brendan, and Celeste, people who knew exactly what they were getting into and had chosen it with open eyes. The sentencing hearing came 30 days later. 5 years supervised probation, $200,000 in restitution, community service hours, a permanent felony record. Gwendolyn's career in consulting was over. Rutherford's efforts to spin the narrative had accomplished nothing. And when the verdict came through, I felt something I hadn't expected. Nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just the quiet recognition that the process had done what it was supposed to do. The foundation had held. Everything built on lies had eventually stopped holding its own weight. 18 months after that launch party, I stood in the conference room at Holloway Strategic. Bigger office now, better location, 12 employees instead of 3 partners, and a borrowed desk, and watched Fiona present to a Fortune 500 client. She was good at it. Better every month, honestly. The client signed a 2-year contract worth $3.4 million, our largest deal to date. After they left, Fiona, Brendan, Celeste, and Wren gathered in my office with the specific energy of people who have just confirmed that what they're building is real. We should celebrate, Brendan said. Dinner, I said. Somewhere nice. Bring your families. Fiona laughed. Listen to you getting sentimental, but yes, we did it. That Friday, we gathered at a restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. Fiona's husband, an engineer who actually listened when she talked about work. Brendan's girlfriend, a high school teacher with a sharp sense of humor and exactly zero tolerance for pretension. Celeste's partner, a graphic designer who'd quietly helped us refine our brand identity without billing us for it. Wren came alone, but spent most of dinner holding her own in a conversation about data infrastructure with Fiona's husband that the rest of us couldn't follow. And my kids. Callum, now 13, wearing a blazer he'd picked out himself and managing to look both very young and surprisingly put together. Petra at 16, confident in a way she hadn't been when all of this started, the watchfulness in her eyes a little softer. During dinner, Callum leaned over. Dad, did you see Mom's LinkedIn? No, I said. Oh, why would I? She's working at a coffee shop, he said. Not like managing it, just working there. I glanced at Petra. She met my eyes and gave a slight shrug. She'd known and hadn't brought it up, which was Petra being Petra. That's honest work, I said to Callum. Nothing wrong with it. I know, he said. It's just weird. She used to be so important. She thought she was important, Petra said quietly. There's a difference. After dinner, we walked along the waterfront. The city lights made long reflections on the water. Callum ran ahead, still young enough to find joy in the simple act of running. Petra walked beside me with her hands in her jacket pockets. "You did good, Dad," she said. "We did good," and I corrected. "All of us. You, Callum, me. We figured out how to be okay." "Better than okay," she said. "We're actually happy." I don't think we were before. Not really. She was right. The marriage had been comfortable in the particular suffocating way that arrangements built on performance can be. Predictable, orderly, but not genuine. Not real. Standing on that waterfront, with my kids and my partners and their families around me, I felt something I'd honestly forgotten could exist in everyday life. Peace. Not because I'd won some battle, because I'd stopped fighting someone else's battle and started living my own life. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. "I'm sorry for what I did. I hope someday you can forgive me." I read it once, completely. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not because I was still angry, because forgiveness isn't something you can request in a text message after 18 months of silence, and more importantly, because I'd already moved forward without it. I didn't need her apology to be okay. I was already okay. She'd have to find her own way to get there. From up ahead on the path, Callum called out, pointing at something moving in the dark water, a fish or a bird, or just the light playing tricks. Petra jogged forward to see. I followed, phone in my pocket, the past exactly where it belonged, behind me.